What's up, YouTube? Literally, what's up, YouTube? I'm speaking directly to YouTube. And sorry, all of you have to hear this at the same time. We've been having some problems on the channel, as YouTube will know. So we have to do this quick little disclaimer before we let the video roll through. If anybody wants to go ahead and skip forward, I can totally understand. But we have to explain something real quick. We are about to do a video. So again, this is for YouTube reviewers, the experts at YouTube. And I'm not trying to be a smarty pants, but we're having real problems with people not understanding what things are. So we're going to go through a quick tutorial. This here that I'm holding is an unloaded, in other words, in safe condition. You can probably see some daylight through that barrel at some point. So an unloaded single shot rifle. This is a hunting rifle. It only holds one round of ammunition at a time. There is no magazine, so there is no high capacity magazine. It has a regular hunting style buttstock that has a bullet keeper or a cartridge holder here that holds cartridges. That is not a bump stock. Okay, it does not make the gunfire simulated fully auto because it's only a single shot. Keep that in mind. And also, it's just not a bump stock. It's also not a machine gun. It can't fire more than one round with a pull of the trigger because, again, it's a single shot hunting rifle. It's not an assault weapon. It's not an AR-15. It's a hunting rifle. Let me look at my computer here to see what else we might be missing. So we're not supposed to be showing content that shows guns modified with bump stocks, so we don't have that. Hair triggers, okay? This is a stock firearm. This is how it came from the factory. There have been no modifications to the internals of this firearm. There is no hair trigger in this firearm. It is a factory stock trigger. It's actually a very nice trigger. I do give CVA, I give them credit. They made a nice trigger, but it's not a hair trigger. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Thermal, night vision, or infrared sights. So I can tell you that this is a hunting optic. This is a SIG Buckmaster scope. If anybody needs to look up, it's a 3 to 12 power SIG Buckmaster hunting scope. It's not illuminated even. There's no electronics in this scope. It's definitely not infrared. It's definitely not night vision. And was there anything else in there? So no, I think we don't have that. Okay, and as far as the ammo we're using this ammo from Hornady. It's called Superformance. It's a regular hunting cartridge. It's a flat point. You'd see it if you watch the video. It's a flat point hunting cartridge. So it is not incendiary, explosive, I think, or armor piercing. It's none of that. So it says right here, we don't want to have explosive or incendiary ammunition. So even though you're going to see it do a good number on the block back there, when we finally do shoot it, it does make the gel block smoke a little bit. And that's just something called, that's a reaction. That's something called combustion. It's called compression ignition. Sorry if I'm not speaking properly. I'm a little bit irritated right now to even have to do this. It's something called compression ignition. I've misspoke in the past and said that it's sonoluminescence, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, it's called compression ignition. It's a result of what the block is made of. There's no tannerite. There's no explosives. There's nothing like that. It is just what happens when a bullet hits a block. So there is no explosive or incendiary ammunition being used today. The deer are happy about that. And besides, it's against the law to hunt deer with that. So we're definitely not doing that. What else? Content featuring large capacity magazines, 30 rounds or more attached to or separate from a gun. So that, again, we said this is a single shot. You see there's no mag well here. This little thing you hear, that's just a button so that if you want to clean the gun, you can take it apart. There is no magazine for this firearm, so it cannot be a 30-shot firearm. I mean, it can hold a few on the side here, but this is a hunting rifle. Get that, guys. So like I said, this is for the YouTube reviewers. I'm sorry to have to put you through this, everybody else, but this is not a modified firearm. It's definitely not a machine gun. It definitely has no incendiary or explosive ammunition, no high capacity magazines, no thermal sights of any sort like that. It's just a hunting rifle, and we're just shooting a gel block. There's nothing explosive involved. We are on a range right now. We're on a closed private range. Let me go ahead and just turn this camera here. Sometimes people will see what is some of my outbuildings in the back, and those are closed. Nobody's in there. They're empty. They're not used anymore. Other than that, we are on an actual shooting range. This is purpose built as a shooting range. Sorry, I don't know how to look at the camera properly. But this is purpose built shooting range here. We actually, the one outbuilding you see, we use that as a shoot house sometimes. So that is part of the shooting range. That's why it's not occupied with anything else. So we're on a safe range doing safe things. We have medical equipment on standby, and we are professionals. If there's anything else, please let me know, but I think this video should be good. It should clear all checks, especially keeping in mind that I'm not facilitating the sale of anything. If I talk about this ammunition, we're just talking about it. If I talk about this scope, these rings, or this rifle, we're just talking about it. I never link to anything. I never do any of that. Everybody knows that. So, with all that said, we do not facilitate the sale of firearms. We never link to any companies. We do not do paid advertisements for anybody. We are not a shill for anybody. We don't do any of that either. So it's impossible to be entrapped by any of that stuff because we don't do it. Again, sorry everybody had to sit through this. This is just what's going on right now with the channel. And with that said, let's let the video roll. Hopefully you guys get to actually see it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this. Let's go. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. Straight While Hunting Cartridge Series continued. We have the 444 Marlin out again. We have the Hornady Superformance back out again. And it's time to do some gel testing. So you saw when we introduced this rifle, we used this Hornady Superformance ammunition. You might have seen the video where we used it in the 444 Marlin BFR revolver. It works pretty well. It's pretty accurate stuff out of both of these. I do like the downrange accuracy of it. I want to put it into ballistics gel. I want to see what happens down there at 100 yards, and I want to see what happens up here close at about 20 yards. And I'm sure a lot of you want to see it too because everybody likes gel. So I would definitely check out those other two videos with the revolver and the rifle so that you can see how this stuff did accuracy-wise. It's pretty good. What it is an exposed lead flat point semi-jacketed round. It's 265 grains, and it has an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,400 feet per second. We're going to try to get a reading off this Garmin and off of this Caldwell as we shoot that gel block all the way down there at 100 yards. I'm going to do the 100-yard shot first just because my accuracy might not be the best. We do have pretty high wind. I don't know if that'll matter today. But then I'll bring it back to 20 yards where I can figure out how to put the second shot in there and we can still see something. Hopefully I don't mess any of that up. And just so you guys know the setup, this is a CVA Scout V2 as in version 2, TD as in takedown. So the CVA Scout V2 TD, chambered in 444 Marlin, of course. On top of that, we have a set of SIG Buckmaster rings holding a SIG Buckmaster scope that is a 3 to 12 power. The reason I'm using this setup is because it's simple. It doesn't have a lot of moving parts. Accuracy should be pretty consistent once you find an ammunition that it likes, which it pretty much likes this, but it's also a budget option. It's not very expensive for this rifle, this scope, the mount, anything like that. I want to just show you guys what you can do if you choose to get into hunting. The ammunition costs plenty. You don't need to spend a whole bunch on the rifle just to shoot a deer once a year or a couple times a year. That's not to say having a nice fancy rifle with a bunch of fancy stuff isn't a good idea sometimes, but for the average person just trying to explore certain cartridges, like a 444 Marlin that you might not be sure of, it's a good way to at least try it out first. Enough talking, let's get to shooting. All right, hopefully I don't screw this up. The chronograph is acting up. I don't know if it's because of the wind or because of the overcast, but hopefully one of these chronographs picks it up. No matter what, we do know the velocity from our other videos. I got the zooms all the way up, and let's crack this block at 100 yards. And I know that I hit it. Hopefully that round stayed in there. We have 2384 off of the Garmin. We have an error on the Caldwell. I figured that would happen, but it definitely scooted that block. Let's see what happened. 2384.4. All right, that is actually very awesome shot placement. That leaves us enough room to do what we have to do with the other shot. Looking at it from the side, holy crap, we have a very nice entrance channel right there. That is very devastating. That is beautiful. And it continues traveling all the way through that first block into the catcher block. It started to slightly deviate upward, but there it is, completely pancaked out. That is just awesome. Slight piercing wound cavity behind it, but that thing is laying into the other block. So it went through the first 20 inches right there. This is a 16-inch block. Let me straighten things out. We'll get to the other side. Don't worry about all that other stuff. That was other tests, but we'll get the tape measure on it to know exactly where it landed. But that is just awesome. And we just got done looking at the slow motion, and yes, that was a nice impact. You guys see it before we do. Coming in from the top here, it's kind of hard to see because of our shadows, but we do have a nice entrance wound. I just can't get a good angle on it right now. But moving down into the second block, it's actually very close to the top of that block. I'll try to zoom in a little bit there for you. And there you go. You can see that those petals are completely blown backwards, and it just has pretty nice, very nice mushroom top to it. Very uniform in the block right there. Let me get to the other side. And I fidgeted with this block just for a second to straighten it up, but it pushed this thing back at least 4 inches. It was right at the edge of the table, I believe, and it scooted that whole thing back like that, hanging off the edge of the table. So that projectile is sitting right there at 23 inches pretty much exactly. Almost went out the top, but we caught it, we saved it. And tracking that wound cavity back, that major disruption, it starts to settle down at about 13.5 inches. So right as it comes out the other side of the deer, probably. You got to take into consideration that this is gel and things do weird things when they hit bone and ribs and whatnot. But look at that enormous wound cavity there to start out with. Holy moly. I'd say that the most violent part of that wound track is the first 6.5 inches. That is no joke. All right, they're tilting it a little bit so we can see it from the top. We do have that enormous charring effect inside there also, but enormous wound channel moving all the way down and getting into the second block like we've seen. All right, out with the old, in with the new. These rifles do have an extractor, not an ejector, so you have to remove the case, which is fine with me. You don't lose your brass that way. We are between 15 and 20 yards off of that gel block. It's just where we have to set up. I've turned the zooms down to, I'm at 4 right now. And let me try to tag this block where I'm supposed to. That was pretty good. I'd say we definitely hit the crap out of it. The Garmin says 2405, and that translates out to a whole bunch of energy. But that definitely hit what the box said it was supposed to. The box over here claims 2,400 feet per second out of the muzzle, and we hit 2405. That's pretty nice. The Caldwell down there says 2353, I believe. 2353, and we definitely have some devastation over here on the table. Knocked down the main block, knocked down or knocked over the backer block. Let's clean up this mess and see what we got on our hands. Well, I didn't have to search too far. This block that is sitting right here all askew, I like that word, askew, the bullet has landed right underneath it. So right there, I believe it ejected itself out of the bottom of that block. If you turn it over to its side, I can definitely see, let me adjust focus. Yep, you can see where it just decided to exit right down there. And there we go. I didn't even have to cut that one out. So it really must not have had much energy once it was at that point in the block. But still, let me clean things up and put it back together. All right, so we definitely have a cored out entrance wound right there with some immediate explosion stuff going on. I washed off the block as best as I could. If I dry it, it'll kind of mess it up a little bit. But you can see that expansion happening early on, moving down, did pretty much what the other shot did. And then it spit itself out right at 21 3/4 inches. It actually touched 22 1/4. With the bounce back, it definitely touched 23, but there it lands all mushroomed out. Like I showed you, it's spit out of the bottom of the block. If I tip it a little bit there, you can see it underneath the top track. So it starts out big and gets smaller as the other one gets larger because we hit them on opposite ends. This side might be a slightly better side to look at. We flipped it around, so now it's starting here and it's going that way. So you can see it going down. You can follow that piercing wound channel like that all the way till it exited. Where the one on top, for some reason, all the way out there, just really did a different job of expanding at the very beginning. But no matter what, when it hit this point in the gel, it went straight in and then it just spit straight down. So the longer range shot made it a little bit farther by a couple inches. So here's the shot at about 20 yards and here's the shot out at 100 yards. So immediately you can see that this one has expanded more violently, larger, wider. If you flip it over, you'll see that it has mangled itself a lot more than this one has. It didn't quite go as uniform as the one did at the longer shot. This could be a result of the higher velocity being closer to the block. It did more disturbance on its way in. It might not have showed that on the block, but it shows it here in the end result of the bullet. You see that the copper petals have curled all the way around to the back of the base, where they did not do this on the one that went out to 100 yards. So this one definitely had a decrease in velocity out there. I wasn't going to risk a chronograph out at that distance, so that's why I didn't set the chronograph all the way out there. Maybe next time I will for a different test. But you saw this one get deeper in the gel block, and I think that's simply because this one had a bigger frontal area, therefore it puts on the brakes faster once it gets into the gel block. So what started out as this ended up being this and this. It's a little bit windy, so the scale is going to jump around just a hair, but it's going to jump around a few hairs. But what we basically have here is 263.9 grains of retained weight. I'd say that's pretty darn good, pretty darn close, especially with the jumpy scale. That was out of the one that was 20 yards away. We'll pretty much get back down to zero, almost. We'll try. And then this one out of the 100-yard shot retained 264, 263 point something. Let's call it 264. So it's basically almost at the exact same weight, minus a grain or two. The 100-yard shot seems to have expanded out to 0.798 inches. And grabbing onto the widest part of that copper jacketing, I'm at 0.939 inches on the closer shot. If I actually grab it by where the biggest part of the expanded lead is, I'm at 0.904 inches. That gel block dried up just a little bit, so maybe I can show you that wound channel just a little bit better. Went down to the piercing wound channel. That, of course, jumped into the other block. I still have it backwards, but it's probably your best angle to see it right now. Compared to that one up top, just extreme violence out of that one up top at first. Pretty cool stuff. So Hornady Superformance 265 grain flat point and a CVA Scout V2. That's what it does at gel, or that's what it does to gel at 20 yards and 100 yards. I think that's pretty darn powerful stuff. Stay tuned for many more videos with this rifle, other ammunitions, and definitely other cartridges in the straight wall hunting family. Hope you're enjoying this series. Hope you enjoyed this video. Until we see you next time, stay safe, have fun, and keep shooting.